Yo, I got a 2010 Kia Soul in here. I'm going to be doing a timing belt to this thing. So I had the guy mail order a timing belt water pump kit online. He got it off of eBay. I told him to get this one because it's an ASIN kit. I like these for the Asian cars. Basically because it's got an ASIN pump in it, and the ASIN pump says right on it made in Korea, which is strange because I look at the other side and it says Japan. And Kia is Korean, so that's good. Anything that says China in a water pump, I would not put on anything, especially Asian cars, because the Chinese water pumps, that's, a lot of times that's what you get from your regular parts stores is Chinese pumps, and I've had a lot of problems with them. So this is the way I like to do it. It saves them a lot of money. The tensioner and the bearings all Korean. Korea. And then it's got a Mitsubishi belt, which is really nice. These are fine. Mitsubishi, they put in Hondas and all kinds of other stuff. Even though it says made in Singapore, this is a good belt. So this is a really nice kit. First thing I'm going to do with this car is drain the coolant. There's a little white petcock directly below the power steering pump. What I'm going to do with this is I got a 6.21 millimeter, and I'm just going to put it right around the plug. It fits just perfect, just like that. I'm going to unscrew this thing. It seems to be the easiest way to get these off. I left the radiator cap on it too, so it doesn't pour out real fast. Now if I unscrew this cap just a little bit, it should just dribble out just nice and easy without making a big mess like most cars do. How nice. Bad ball joint. 21 millimeter on the lug nuts. Oh, I found a friend. He'll be with me through the process. Say cheese, little buddy. Where'd you go? 10 millimeters on this cover I need to take off. I used my wimpy little baby butterfly to get these off, hoping that they wouldn't break, but two of them did. They're rusted in really good. I have 4 10 millimeter bolts on this water pump pulley. I'm gonna want to loosen these up. I'll just leave them like that for now. On this alternator, there's a 12 millimeter adjuster bolt. I got a 12 millimeter deep well and a short extension on here. I'm just gonna loosen this up. Just give it like a full revolution. And then there's a 12 millimeter bolt right here for the tension. I'm gonna turn that counterclockwise, and it's really stuck. There's a 12 millimeter bolt on the bottom of this alternator too. I'm gonna loosen that up a little bit. And then if I just pull on this belt, I can get the alternator to move. I'm just going to keep loosening this up until it's loose enough for me to get this belt off of here. I have a tensioner for the air conditioning here on the back side of the engine, on the bottom. This is a 14 millimeter. I want to loosen this up. And then I have a 12 millimeter adjuster bolt. And I think I want to turn this counterclockwise, and this should loosen up this tensioner. Wow, that's a good looking belt too. Power steering belt has a 14 millimeter on the top. There's a 12 millimeter on the front and the bottom of this pump too, but I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to get in here with a pry bar and just tap on this with a hammer. I don't know if this engine's going to fall down or not, so I'm supporting it with a jack and a couple blocks of wood under the oil pan. I have 4 17 millimeters on the top of this mount. The top of this mount off of here. I let it down all the way. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I'm going to let the car down now, and I'm going to get the front of this engine up as far as I can. Looks like if I go any farther, I'm going to start bending stuff right here, so that's where I'm going to have it. I just did that so it's a little easier for me to get at these 4 bolts on this water pump pulley that I previously loosened up. Thankfully enough on this car too, there's notches on the pulleys and there's a notch on the water pump, so it can only go on one way and it lines up by itself. I have a support bracket here that's under the motor mount. It's got a 14 millimeter on it. Looks like I have 3 10 millimeter bolts on this top timing cover. Oh yeah, there's another one right here. So there's 4 of these bolts. And that is one fairly horribly cracked up timing belt. This person's playing with fire with this interference engine. What we got here? 156,000 miles on the original belt. Kia recommends that you do them at 60. Some people stretch it out to 100. It's way overdue. Before I go any farther, I'm gonna line up this timing mark. You can see there's a little dot and it's marked up, and there's a little notch in the cylinder head on the cam cap, and that dot is supposed to be lined up with that notch. I'm going to try to line that up as best as I can. A lot of times I just get in here with a mirror and a flashlight so I can look through that hole and make sure I can see that red mark. Now I'm in here with a flashlight and a mirror. I'm shining the light inside of there and I can see the little red mark. So it's 0 for now. Just like that. Here's my red mark right there. Now that I'm done with all that fooling around, I'm gonna pull this belt back just a little bit. Hit this with a little brake cleaner. I got white marking paint. I'm gonna make my own damn mark. That'll make my life a lot easier. 22 millimeter. Be able to just rock this back and forth and it should come right out. Looks like I have 4 10 millimeters for this lower timing cover. Okay, I was wrong. There's 5. There's another one hiding up above the water pump. Well, this cover comes off somehow. That was kind of a fun thing to squirrel out of there. Ooh. We have broken teeth. Man, this person is so lucky this thing didn't break. The timing belt breaks on this engine, the whole thing's junk, usually. Now I want to double check my timing marks. There's a dot right here and a groove right there. And it's almost right on the money. And the mark I made didn't move, so this is good. I got it right. That lower timing belt cover probably would have came off a lot easier if I took off these 2 14 millimeter bolts in this bracket. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take off this tensioner next on the top. There's actually marks on this thing that are kind of buried in a funny spot. You can see that pointer, and then there's that groove on the bracket that's behind it. And when the tension is right, that pointer is supposed to be anywhere inside of them grooves, and obviously it's off because it's a wore out belt. This is a 12 millimeter. There really wasn't any spring tension left on this thing. It was all out of adjustment. I should be able to get this belt off now. That's really good looking stuff. It looks like it ate something. I'm gonna go after this water pump next. I'm just gonna stick a pry bar in between the power steering pump and this bracket. I'm gonna pull back on it because it'll give me a little more room to get at the bolts for the bracket. I got 4 12 millimeter bolts on this bracket. There's one bolt that's bolted onto the alternator too for the adjuster, and I'm gonna leave that one on. Now I should be able to just move this whole alternator with the bracket back. Get it out of my way. Like so. I can get this idler pulley off now. That's a 14 millimeter. Then I have 3 more 12 millimeters for this water pump. I'm gonna get this top one out first. I'm just gonna loosen these up because I wouldn't be surprised if I'm gonna take a little bath here. I got my drain pan underneath the water pump and I'm just gonna give this a couple of taps, break the seal, and get wet. I got all the bolts out. Tap it again a couple more times. Wiggle it around until the big dumb thing comes out. Come on, big dumb thing, get out of there. Big dumb thing. There's a metal gasket stuck onto the block I'm gonna take off. I should be able to just hit this surface with a razor blade. It looked like most of it came off. There's 2 alignment pins that are supposed to be in this block for this water pump. One of them got stuck in the water pump. Take a tapered punch and just stick it in here and roll it around, and it just comes right out. You gotta put that back in the block. These are press fit in. There's really no room to use a hammer, so I just got a long extension. I'm just gonna try to tap this thing in here. I got a vacuum brake bleeder. I'm gonna try to suck as much of this coolant out of here as I can. Looks like it's dry and done dripping now. This is nice, clean, and dry. Once in a while I put a really fine bead of Permatex on here, like ultra gray, but I'm not going to need to do that. So I'm just gonna put this on here. I gotta kind of squirrel this up here, kind of funny. It wouldn't go in at first because it's on the very top. It's got to go under a little bit of a lip on the cylinder head. I'm gonna kind of go in a crisscross pattern and just snug all these bolts down on the water pump. And I'm gonna try to get up here with a torque wrench and final torque these to 20 foot-pounds. The 2 bolts on the bracket way up on top, and the top water pump bolt I'm gonna try to get from up top, and I'm gonna do all of those at 20 foot-pounds too. I can put this new idler pulley on now. I'm gonna tighten this to 35 foot-pounds. Make sure it spins real nice. I'm gonna put the belt on next, and the trick is you got the drive side, which is the side that the idler's on, and you got the driven side, which is the side of the tensioner. So when I put this on, I want to make sure that this side is tight and that side's loose, so there can't really be any play on the drive side. This crankshaft pulley moved a little bit, and I can just get a MacGyver wrench on here and just turn it just a little bit. And I got it right because there's really no tension right here on this side, and this side's all floppy and loose. So I know it's right. I got the marks lined up. They look good. I'm on the top side now. I got the engine jacked up as much as I can. And these tensioners, the new one, there's a pin on it that I get to pull when I put it back on because this is on an eccentric. And I just want to make sure this tab, there's 2 different core plugs, and I got to make sure that it's on the bottom plug. I got to kind of squirrel this around here real funny, and I got to make sure that that tab is on the bottom plug. So the pin I want in between the belt, like that. No, I don't want to get this bolt tight yet either. So I got the pin on the inside of the belt, and then I just want to double check again and make sure that this side is tight, which it is, and this side right here should be really loose. See how loose that is? It's really loose, and this other side's kind of taut. The goofy thing about this tensioner is you got an arrow that's pointed counterclockwise. So you want to make sure that this eccentric is turned counterclockwise, and it's got to be pushed up against that frost plug down on the bottom. And if you go too far, if you turn it just a little too far past the eccentric, I'm turning it clockwise and it's pushing up against the belt, and I don't want that. I got to turn it counterclockwise and be on the other side of the eccentric, and that's why that arrow is there. So I need to rotate this all the way around so it's kind of facing down, and this frost plug, I can move this, and it's got to be down on the frost plug, like facing the ground. And just so long as it's on the back side of the eccentric, I can pull this pin like so, and I can see where that pointer is, and it's almost right where it's supposed to be. But if I want to put it in the window, I got to put my 7mm wrench in here and look at the thing at the same time. So I actually have to turn it clockwise just a hair to line up that mark. But the stupid thing is if I go even just a little bit farther than that, this eccentric goes too far. So I don't know why that mark's on there, and I'm just gonna not listen to any of that crap. See, now I got a problem here because it don't want to stay there. I read a Gates technical service bulletin on this, and they're all smoking crack because they're trying to tell me I can turn this eccentric counterclockwise and that arrow will move up. Because if I turn the eccentric all the way around the other way, that needle is going to spring back and it's going to wind up totally unloaded, and it's going to be facing up towards the top, and then I'm going to have to turn it clockwise more to move the needle down, and I don't want that because this thing's loaded right now, so it's going to be hard for it to back off. I'm pretty sure this arrow's here just to tell you that the eccentric needs to be turned all the way up this way somehow. I can try to move it just a little bit more, and that's pretty much as far as I'm going to get it right there. If I go any farther, it's going to be on the opposite side of the eccentric, and it's going to snap back and move the other way. So this is kind of like a crack smoking idea here. So I can just hold this with my 7mm wrench, and I'm going to tighten it down right there because I know that's as far as it's going to go before it snaps back the other way and doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And I'm going to tighten this down to 20 foot-pounds. It's kind of a goofy tensioner, but that's the way it's going to work for me. Now I just have to double check my timing marks, and the one I made is lined up really close. And this one here is right where it's supposed to be. Now I have to double check my work. Of course, I got to make sure this side isn't loose, and it's not. It's nice and tight. And this side feels really good too. So if this side is loose, it's a tooth off. Obviously it's not. I'm going to put this on here just so my belt doesn't walk off. I'm going to throw this balancer on. I'm going to turn this over 2 revolutions of the crankshaft, which is 1 revolution of the camshaft. This is going to make sure the belt's lined up, and then I'm going to check the tension. That's lined up perfect. That's lined up perfect. After I did my 2 revolutions and checked all my marks, I turned the counterclockwise until the cam sprocket was about 2/3 of the way out. If you look at the mark that I made for my timing and the up mark, it's like right at the top of the tensioner, and that is the most unloaded that this timing tensioner is going to be, because I was watching the needle while I was turning it counterclockwise, and that's as far as it's going to go. So it's almost perfectly in that window, and it gets tight and loose when it runs. I mean, that's just how a timing belt works. It's gonna flutter just a little bit because of the camshaft lobes. So I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna put these timing belt covers on next. I jacked the engine up just a little bit, and these little dust seals kept falling out, so I hot glued those back on. Hopefully I can cram this thing up here without too much of a fuss. Oops. That goes on the outside. These get torqued down to 5 foot-pounds. 5 times 12 would be 60 inch-pounds. I'm just going to do them by hand though. Now I can put this goofy bracket back up here. These should get tightened to about 35 foot-pounds. Now for the balancer, I put oil on this bolt and I put oil on the flat on the washer, just like a Honda. I did that so I make sure I get the right torque reading out of this thing. I can't find any way to keep this crankshaft from moving with like a pry bar in the flywheel teeth or anything like that, so I got this cheesy little Harbor Freight chain vice grip thing, and these actually work pretty good. I'm gonna get that nice and tight like that. I'm going to tighten this bolt down to 120 foot-pounds. This bolt gets tightened down to 45 foot-pounds. Now I can have fun with this hokey water pump pulley. I'm going to put that groove facing up just so it's a little easier to find. By some piece of luck and amazement, I got the thing on. I'm just going to snug these down a little bit. I can't get them all tight until I get the belts on. Start with the power steering first. Had to kind of twist that one on. Now when I tighten these belts up, I want to make sure that I can twist them like a quarter turn. And I can tell this one's obviously way too loose. I'm going to get in here with a pry bar in between the bracket and the pump and pull back on it. And that feels about right. If you really want to torque this bolt, it'd be like 35 foot-pounds. That'd be my guess. I gotta stretch this one on here too. That feels pretty good. You can torque this one at 35 foot-pounds too if you really feel like it. It's gonna get a little tighter. That actually tightened up too much. I gotta loosen this back up again. That feels pretty good. This one's no different. It's going to get stretched on as well. That feels good. This bottom alternator bolt, if you want to torque this down, you want to torque it to about 20 foot-pounds. If you want to get in here with a torque wrench, you can tighten these adjuster bolts down to 20 foot-pounds. If you think you can get in here with a torque wrench, you have at it. I'm going to do these by hand and just get a good feel of them. They're crammed in here pretty good. And that's all of those. Now I can jack this engine down a little bit, kind of get it level, get this mount in here. Now this big bolt gets torqued to 60 foot-pounds. And all these little guys down here, they get torqued to 45. It's so hot I didn't feel like wearing gloves today, and I broke a nail. Oh, doesn't that look juicy? Okay, the moment of truth. I'm gonna see if this thing wants to run. Pretty normal. All I have to do to this car now is fill it up with coolant, get it up to operating temperature, make sure that the level's all the way full, burp the system, I'm using universal global coolant. Anytime you do one of these, you always want to make sure that it's, what is it, sulfate and borate free universal coolant. No conventional coolant. I just have to put a tire on it and that cover, but I'm not going to do that yet because up next, ball joints. Okay, bye.